No jaywalking on my watch.
An undercover officer accused of going too far during a prostitution bust.
A Pittsburgh area cop may have taken too much pleasure in his work after he reportedly engaged in an on-the-job sex act.
I think this is a witch hunt. I believe the officer did nothing wrong.
He's the police union rep, and the Homestead, Pennsylvania officer in question says all this is being taken out of context. So let's check the context, written by the officer himself, Detective Ronald DePellegrin. According to the criminal complaint, DePellegrin found this saucy online ad posted by one Becky Diamond. He told his chief about it, and the chief gave him the okay to perform a sting. DePellegrin contacted Diamond to set up a meeting. He also swung by Walgreens to pick up some supplies requested by the alleged prostitute. DePellegrin and his partner drove to this house, where DePellegrin met up with Diamond. She got undressed, he got undressed, and here's what DePellegrin says happened next. Becky started to perform on me when I said, "Oh, the cops were coming." You cool with that, Mr. Union Rep?
In the course of officers doing undercover work, sometimes they have to do what they have to do to effectuate an arrest.
DePellegrin will reportedly not be punished. In fact, when a similar controversy erupted in the area in 2010, the local district attorney declared it's not inappropriate for a police officer to get naked on the job, although actually having sex may constitute outrageous government conduct.
You filming me? You filming me, punk?
Come on, don't cops have better things to do? Homestead suffers from some of the worst crime rates in the Pittsburgh area. Its violent crime rate is about 3 times the national average. Ditto for property crime. So instead of searching for prostitutes, maybe Homestead's finest could spend more time searching for the violent criminals on the most wanted list. Follow the show on Twitter, submit your nominees for next month, and answer this question. What should we call cops who waste time with stupid stuff when they have better things to do?
That one of them energy drinks? Not on my watch.
Police openly resisting legislation that will ban cops from having legal sex with prostitutes. Twin bills in Alaska seek to criminalize police sexual contact with prostitutes, but the legislations highlight an epidemic of officer coercive sex and sexual assault going largely ignored by the corporate press. By Claire Burnish, June 17, 2017. Alaskan police are still fighting twin bills winding their way through state legislature because the proposed legislation would make sexual contact with sex workers illegal. Anchorage Police Deputy Chief Sean Kasey traveled to Juneau earlier this year to plead the need for officers to be able to touch sex workers during an investigation, or their cover, and, thus, the case would be blown. House Bill 112 and Senate Bill 73, Kasey claims, are offensive to law enforcement officers and unnecessary because myriad laws and regulations already govern such conduct. HB 112 states, in part, an offender commits the crime of sexual assault in the third degree if the offender, while acting as a peace officer in the state, engages in sexual penetration with a person with reckless disregard that the person is the victim, witness, or perpetrator of a crime under investigation by the offender. If we make that act of touching a misdemeanor, we have absolutely no way of getting involved in that type of arrest, Kasey told the Alaska Dispatch News. Under the premise officers have only limited physical contact with prostitutes, such as touching a woman's breast upon request when posing as a John Kasey and his ilk around the nation feel stripping cops of that ability would be detrimental. In actuality, however, an epidemic of police violence extends tragically into the world of sex work. Officer rapes of prostitutes are far from uncommon. Indeed, sex workers will cop check a potential John requesting contact they know to be illegal in order to determine if the person is an undercover officer, who would at least theoretically not break the law. But officers frequently do have extensive sexual contact up to, and including, sexual intercourse with targets of prostitution investigations. Maggie McNeil writes for Reason. The Alaska bills were introduced through the efforts of sex worker activists, who well know that in every place where sex work is criminalized or even semi-criminalized, and that includes all 50 American states, police and/or their paid informants routinely take sexual liberties ranging from groping to full intercourse with women they're investigating. Sometimes they claim this is necessary for gathering evidence or, as in the Anchorage excuse above, part of the process of arresting the sex workers. Other times the activity somehow doesn't make it into police reports at all. Imagine that. This is exactly why Alaskan activists want the contact prohibited. In short, the pompous, self-serving claim police must have what amounts to lascivious contact represents an abuse of power under the color of law, particularly when Kasey's argument against the criminalizing legislation can be handily picked apart upon examination. In the same interview with Alaska Dispatch News, Kasey asserted, "We are not out there to go out and find that street prostitute. What we're interested in now is the trafficking." McNeil rightly notes the dangerous portent in that statement, as Kasey literally argues the need to be able to further assault victims of trafficking in the interest of solving sex and human trafficking crimes, and the deputy chief isn't alone in that thinking, on both trafficking and low-level prostitution. Across the United States, myriad police departments stridently contend the necessity of sexual contact during investigations. In fact, the Michigan Senate only recently passed legislation backtracking a law in place since 1931 which grants cops immunity for physical, sexual contact with sex workers in the course of performing an investigation, amending it to assign criminal charges to officers found guilty of that contact. Michigan State Police, unlike their peers in Alaska, have not publicly supported or denounced the state Senate Bill 275, rather, as spokesperson Shannon Banner stated in an email to Vice. "There's not much to say about this legislation, as it does not impact us. This was not a tactic used by our troopers." But sex workers in Michigan beg to differ. Although publicly the state police have repeatedly said, "We never use that tactic," in the sex worker community, "We know that's false," opined Krista, a sex worker who runs the Michigan chapter of Sex Workers Outreach Program. "Officers have often had sex with sex workers in Michigan, but they just don't report it." Worse, the proposed amendment does not clearly delineate officer behavior which should be deemed criminal, allowing for charges of prostitution-related offenses against cops whom sex workers allege engaged in sexual penetration while in the course of his or her duties. Penetration in no way represents the gamut of ways in which a person can be sexually assaulted, meaning, the Michigan legislation lacks both the teeth to revoke officer immunity in such cases, as well as the spirit of protection for sex workers in which such a law should be enacted. McNeil continues. In this respect, Michigan's status quo closely resembles one in Hawaii which scandalized reporters and readers 3 years ago. The legislature tried to repeal a 1970s-era immunity clause for cops engaged in prostitution investigations. The police union argued vociferously against the reform, just as they are doing now in Alaska, before eventually dropping their opposition in the face of a tide of popular condemnation. Yet despite that resemblance, most treatments of the Alaskan law don't bother to mention the Hawaiian one. Broadly reported on the apparent epidemic of officers having coercive, investigative, and even forced sex with prostitutes, noting. A research study that Dr. Alexandra Lutnick conducted in San Francisco found that over 14% of sex workers said that they had been threatened with arrest unless they had sex with a police officer, and 2% had been arrested after having sex with an officer anyway. Astonishingly, it's not specifically illegal for police officers in many states to have sex with sex workers during the course of sting operations. Lutnick lamented, the reality of some police having sex with sex workers during the course of undercover operations has been in existence as long as selling sex has been a criminal offense. Sex worker activists and their supporters condemn the lack of protections and the dearth of accurate reporting on the issue, particularly as the corporate press largely repeats bloviating from police departments on the putative need for officer sexual contact. Whether or not Alaska and Michigan, or any other state, will make strides to protect sex workers who, after all, are citizens deserving of the same protections as ordinary citizens remains to be seen. In the interim, sex workers will be doubly victimized by a system protecting the authority of officers over their right not to be groped, assaulted, or raped. For police officers to go so far as to have sexual contact with people as a means to gather evidence and arrest them and charge them, it's just not necessary, argues Maxine Duggan, an advocate with Community United for Safety and Protection, an Alaska sex worker advocacy group. It's state-sponsored sexual assault.
Hey Charlotte County, this is Charlotte County Cop Watch, and I wanted to explain what fair use is. You can use pieces of news articles if you're doing it for news reporting, you have commentary, and you're doing it for education purposes. So that's what fair use is, as you can see right here. Another reason why I wanted to make this video is to let you know I have just joined with Patreon. A nice thing with Patreon, I make no money on YouTube. They took the money away years ago, and so this is another way to give, and it's a nice thing too because you can give monthly. You can give $1, $5, $10, whatever. I do 4 to 5 hours a day on trying to wake the sheeple up on how corrupt it is and different ways that you can fight the corruption. So Patreon is a way that you can do it, and then of course the old way is still there. Donate to Charlotte County Cop Watch with PayPal or credit card. So keep that in mind. 4 to 5 hours a day. I make no money, but the corruption happened to me and I'm sick of it, so I'm trying to wake people up. But my wife would love it if if we could get some help out there. There's 47,000 subscribers. Just think if each one of you subscribers just gave let's say actually yes, $1 a month. 47,000 subscribers gave $1 a month. That would be awesome. That's not going to happen. But anyways, that would be great if it did happen. But do the math in your head. Just think about it. Like I said, 4 to 5 hours a day. I get no money from YouTube. YouTube has gone nuts. You can't do anything anymore. They're taking the money away everywhere. So these are a couple different ways that you can still help out with all this time that I put in. And as you know, I'm in a special situation where, at least I can do it. 4 to 5 hours a day. We have a cleaning company during the day. That's what allows me to do this, and we're debt-free. So this is my hobby. I don't go fishing and all that other crap. I try to save the world. So help me out to make the wife happy, man. In fact, if you guys did give $1 a day, and there was 47,000 of you, and you did it, and each of you gave $1, and that was every month, oh my God, yes, I could quit. I could start suing them. Another idea too that we have is if I got some funds, we could actually contact everyone that has been ticketed and or arrested and put in jail and start sending them postcards to let them know we're here, and to see if everything went all right, and if it didn't, find out their story. So we could even do more investigations and more lawsuits. Lawsuits take money. So just think about that. 47,000 of you so far right now. $1 a day. $1 a month on Patreon, or $5 a month Patreon, 10, 20, whatever. Just do the math in your head, help out. This is a lot of work every single day. Thanks.